Hello, everyone, and welcome to this webinar. We're really pleased that you're joining us today. We're just waiting for a few more people to join. In a few seconds, I'll start the introduction and we can get going with our presentation. Right, hello, and welcome to this webinar, where we're going to discover what is truly driving consumer decisions on sustainability. Hosted by the Sustainable Hospitality Alliance, this webinar will showcase the first-of-a-kind, in-depth research which quantifies how big the market for sustainable hospitality really is. The Sustainable Hospitality Alliance brings together engaged hospitality companies and the wider hospitality chain, along with strategic partners, to address key challenges affecting the planet, people, and places around the world. Members, some of you are members here on this webinar, represent over 50,000 hotels spanning 270 brands, totaling over 7 million rooms. Speakers on this webinar today include Dr. Crispian Tarrant, the chairman and founder of BDRC, the Global Insights Agency, and we have Richard Stevenson, a senior director in BDRC, who will present his insight into customer experience and satisfaction, including brand positioning. First, I'm going to hand over to Tim Davis, the founder and managing director of Pace Dimensions, a research and management consultancy firm specializing in travel and hospitality. Tim.
Thanks very much. Over to why sustainability. Why is the importance of sustainability for so many across the hotel industry? And I'm very pleased to say on our audience today, we have a real cross-section of those of you responsible for sustainability, but as well brand leaders, marketing leaders, commercial leaders, distribution, also here. And there's a reason for that, because sustainability is something that now percolates across the management boards and needs to become and is growingly becoming a core feature in the mindset and thinking and consciousness of everybody in hotel companies. What has led up to this? Well, now these days there really are some very unprecedented times, and actions that need to be taken by hotel companies really are quite significant in this area. Historically, sustainability has been driven by companies wanting to mitigate against reputation damage, protect the value of hotel assets, reduce the cost of debt, and also to comply with law. Hotel properties like office, like accommodation, and any commercial property together accounts for 40% of the world's carbon emissions, and about 3/4 of that is driven by the operation of the building, and about 25% of that is driven by what's embedded in the way the building is built and the way it is recycled. So it's a big issue for the industry, and now what is changing is those historic factors are being added to by consumerism. Consumerism and corporate behavior all starting to air their voice in terms of saying, actually, we care about it too. And that is affecting our choices of which hotels we stay in and which hotel companies we have as preferred partners. So when you add these factors together, sustainability and growth can be self-reinforcing factors. Investing in sustainability can make hotels more operationally efficient. It can increase the capital value of the asset. It also makes the brand more appealing, and the brand being more appealing can drive more demand. And that drives more appeal for owners to invest, and therefore growth of hotel networks. So one shouldn't think about these two things in isolation. They are both self-reinforcing factors, and it's a great opportunity for hotel companies to think about these two elements, not just about being responsible for the planet, but also being prosperous in the process in order to take advantage. What does it really require, though? It requires a change in the thinking of management boards, because today a lot of the drive and impetus for sustainability is driven by people who have that job title, Chief Sustainability Officer, etc. And many of the brand marketing commercial functions are aware of what's going on and cognizant of what's going on, but mainly reacting to things like corporate RFPs and other things of that nature. There is the opportunity now for those leaders to take advantage of the investments being made in sustainability by their companies to help position their brands, to help communicate and market better to individual consumers, and to be able to price better. So in summary, the power of consumerism is adding to already strong forces in the marketplace. It's shaping the way demand is generated. It impacts the way we design our products and our brands and how we innovate pricing, for example. It raises a spectre of customer hotel choices increasingly being influenced by sustainability. And importantly, consumers now have much more access to so many more choices because of the internet makes it easy for them to do so. So it creates an opportunity for hotel companies to really take their businesses, not only do the right thing for the planet, but also to make it their proposition more appealing for consumers. The research that we've conducted, and we did this over the course of the last year, was one of the biggest studies of its kind, looking at the top 10 major source markets and answering a number of key questions. The first is around how big is the market? So what is the size of both the markets and the customer segments that really care and are influenced by sustainability? And to what degree does it influence their customer choice? As well as, are they actually willing to pay more? So that's one area of questions the research addresses. The second area is about how do consumers perceive brands? I mean, importantly, what do they care about? And against what they care about, how do they think the existing brands of the world fare against what they care about? And what do they perceive the strengths and weaknesses of each of those brands to be? And that really addresses another question, which is, how are you positioned as a brand against other brands, given that consumer perception? So it's good at addressing the strengths and weaknesses of your own brand and how consumers perceive you. The reality or not, or what you think internally, this is the market lens view of what that is. And finally, it helps us understand how I can better communicate with consumers in order to build confidence and trust, and also how to target the right kinds of consumers in the right markets to the right degree, and what kind of messaging that we need to deliver in order to resonate with what consumers care about. The research helps understand those different factors by market, by customer segment, so you can be much more relevant in your marketing approach. And finally, it helps think through how you better engage, not just through marketing, but also during the stay, what offers you make and how you navigate and nudge behavior during the stay in order for them to be more sustainable and also to enable hotels to be more sustainable. So all of these things the research aims to address. I'd now like to hand over to Chris Tarrant, and he'll take us through some of the an overview of some of the key trends that come out of the research that we've got. Thanks, Chris.
Tim, thank you very much indeed. And I'm just going to go back one slide here because it's appropriate when talking about research that we provide you a little bit of context in terms of who it is we've spoken to. And Tim has made reference to the fact that we've done work in 10 core global source markets. You can see the flags on the left-hand side here. 500 interviews in each market with adults who intend to travel and stay in a hotel within the next 12 months. boosted sample size of 1,000 in the US, reflecting the importance of that particular market. Significantly, as well as looking at consumers, in this research, we've also conducted a B2B element in which we have spoken to large corporates and spoken to travel management professionals within those organisations, all with at least 500 employees and including many with over 5,000 employees. And we've complemented that by speaking to some travel management companies and event planners and meeting planners in major agencies that are providing those services. And that work was done in the US, the UK, and in Germany. Moving on to look at some a first cut of our first bit of data that we're sharing with you here, and some general attitudes towards sustainability. Now, we accept that such questions will be found in other surveys, but we want you to understand this is just the first layer of the information that we have available. And we see that consumers are saying that they think others should be doing more to help in terms of ESG, in particular large companies, but also governments as well. But if you look partway down the chart, sustainable travel is very important to me. We have 41% of all travellers across these 10 markets agreeing with this statement. We have over 1 in 3 agreeing that they're willing to pay more for environmentally friendly products and services, and that they assess the environmental credentials of accommodation when deciding if they will stay there. Significantly, all of these proportions are higher than the number who say that there's too much concern with environmental matters. So clearly, we're seeing some quite strong attitudinal positions across the market as a whole. If we cut the data I just showed on the previous chart by age cohorts, and I have to confess, as a market researcher, I'm usually fairly cautious about doing age cohort analysis, as it can be regarded as too simplistic just to look at one age cohort. But in this instance, there really are some very major differences between the 4 classic age groupings, in which we see Gen Y are the most vociferous in expressing these attitudes, ahead even of Gen Z. I think this is really important because we're seeing big differences. We take Gen Y versus baby boomers. It's really important because what it's saying is that attitudes will shift simply organically in the next 5 to 10 years amongst the core guests for hotels. They'll simply shift organically to become more attuned, more concerned about environmental matters. Now, in addition to asking about attitudes, we also collected information on behaviour. So this is personal actions that people have taken. And nearly everyone we have spoken to, whether they consider it to be an ESG action or not, has done at least some of the items on this chart. And we can see that over half have said that they reduce food waste, cut down on plastic use, recycling, are switching off heating and electricity when they go out. If you look a little bit further down the left-hand side of the chart, you have 1 in 4 who say they avoid buying from companies with a poor environmental reputation. And on the right-hand bar, a slightly smaller proportion saying they avoid buying from companies with poor staff welfare reputations. Overall, it is just a tiny proportion who say that they have done none of these things at all. Now, we've taken this attitudinal material and also the behavioural data to create a new segmentation in terms of attitudes and behaviour with regard to hotel sustainability. And it's really quite important that we've included behaviour, because if you just use attitudes, there is a danger that you end up with socially acceptable or aspirational answers. But by including the behaviour element, we in a sense have a touch of control with regards to what it is that people are telling us. We've come up with 6 segments. And at the bottom of the chart here, we have a group that we have called eco-evangelists. They make up somewhat over 1 in 6 of all travellers. And we add to them those that we've described as good intentions, people who try to be green, but find it's difficult, and find it's in their face, it's actually pretty overwhelming. But if we can help them, they will respond to green initiatives. These two combined, we describe as being the advocates. So 38% of all travellers are in this category. This rises to 2/3 when we include the next couple of groups up. Constrained believers are people who are sort of positively inclined, attitudinally inclined to support ESG matters, but for them, personal circumstance, typically ability to pay, may influence what they can and can't do. Above that, the group that are called accidentally or perhaps even naturally green. Now, I look after things I own, I turn off the lights. If that makes me green, then so be it. If you take those four groups, you've got 2 in 3 of all travellers who are expressing some positive inclination towards sustainability being of significance to them. We just have 1 in 3 who are antagonistic in some form, either because they're very self-centered and their world just revolves around them, or they are climate skeptics who just see this as another way to control them. This next chart, you'll be pleased to know, I'm not proposing to stop on, but just to indicate that we have a series of pen portraits that flesh out each of the segments that we have identified here. And if we just take these eco-evangelists a little bit further, the top half of the chart is looking at the both attitudinal and the behavioural actions, which demonstrate how they vary from the general population of travellers. And so you can see on attitudes, they have very strong attitudes. Sustainable travel is very important to me. 2/3 of them agree with that as a statement. And if you look at the personal actions they're taking, they're very much higher across all of the measures that we have looked at. If you look at some of the key demographics for this group, what we do see is that they're more likely to be women than men by a small proportion. Interestingly, in spite of what I said about age cohorts, we actually find eco-evangelists across the age spectrum. So they're not just young eco-warriors who are spurning capitalism and wealth. Not on the chart, but one thing we have also identified is that this is a group that currently is more prominent in both Italy and in France. And when we think of the time we were doing this research during the mid of 2023, clearly that was a time of extreme weather events, and that may well have been shaping some people's feelings and attitudes towards this whole topic. Moving on from attitudes, we also had a section in which we tried to understand what it is that is important in hotel decision making, in which we include some ESG measures. Commonly in such work, you just ask people how important are each of the following to you, a stated importance measure. The problem with such an approach is it can be a case that everything ends up being important. We've used here a max diff scaling approach. For those of you who have any research familiarity, will have some understanding about. If you want to know more, please do contact us afterwards. In this, each respondent is presented with a series of options and they choose the one that's most appealing to them and the one that is least, and that's repeated on a number of occasions. And as a technique through statistical analysis, it can be very much more discriminating than using a stated importance measure. Now, we didn't just look at how important are ESG factors, but we looked at those alongside some common core hotel attributes. So across the 20 attributes, there is a total of 100% of influence that these 20 attributes are combining for this particular set of attributes. And yes, I think it's no surprise that the core attributes lead. So is good value, offers a great night's sleep, etc. Yet they do not dominate the top 5. And in fact, they account for only 35% of the decision. And here we see ESG matters, led by energy, waste and water use, come through as having a significant influence on people's hotel choices when they're faced with them. This is looking at the sample as a whole. What we definitely see is that for certain market segments, there are considerable variations in the role that these different factors play. So if we go back to our eco-evangelists, not surprisingly, we see that they have much more of a focus on ESG matters. On this particular chart, the background bars that you can see are the whole travelling population, and then the black line is the variation that you can see for the eco-evangelists, and you can see very much peaks for them on the ESG measures, in particular in relation to energy efficiency and energy sources. In fact, for this group, over 70% of their decision is influenced by these ESG measures. So considerably more than the common normal hotel choice characteristics that one may look at. Just to contrast this with our other extreme group, if I share with you the climate skeptics, well, here, for them, by contrast, they are a very value-driven group, and then traditional hotel characteristics come through. I suppose a question to ask for this group is, are they really a desirable target segment for you? Continuing with our theme of these important attributes, Tim has already made reference to how we've looked at brand imagery. Now, there's a wealth of data that we have got here, and I'm just going to give you a very thin surface cut of some of the information that we have. On the left-hand side, you can see our attributes, both the common hotel attributes and those that relate to ESG, and then a series of hotel brands. And to save the embarrassment of the brands here, I haven't actually named them, but these are upper upscale tier brands. Large base sizes here is a clue to the fact that these are actually major global brands. And without identifying the individual players here, this chart includes Hilton, Marriott, Sheraton, and Hyatt on it. In total, we've got imagery data on over 100 brands, some of it available at a global level, some at a regional or just a country-specific level, depending upon the brands in market. Each of these brands has been rated against the same decision attributes. And for each brand, the colours that are shown here indicate variation away from an expected score. So if there's a green box, it's an attribute on which a brand outperforms. A red box is one in which it underperforms, and the orange ochre colour is where it's fairly clear to expected levels. In terms of the general hotel characteristics, we can see that brands W and brands Y do achieve some differentiation. But really the point I want to share with you on this chart is that there is virtually no differentiation on ESG attributes for what are some of the major hotel brands in the world. I am going to share one more chart with you in terms of this brand imagery data, this time from the upper mid-scale. And my purpose for showing this is to indicate that you can see differentiation in terms of ESG attributes. We're not seeing it for the big global brands. Smaller base sizes here are a clue to the fact that some of these are more niche or regional and local brands. And I can reveal, without naming exactly which is which, that included here are Warner Leisure Hotels, La Quinta, Golden Tulip, and Clarion. But the important point here, without looking at the detail, is the fact that there is a variation on ESG measures. Our research then goes to another layer of depth beyond this, and I'm going to pass over to my colleague, Rich Stevenson, who is going to talk about consumer choice modelling and how that has an impact with the markets we're looking at.
Thanks, Chris. Good afternoon, everyone. So we've looked at attitudes, behaviours, differences by segment towards sustainability, and also the brand position. We've also developed a tool that will allow us to simulate demand for new hotel options, which include an additional focus on ESG elements. And we think for the first time, this will allow you to accurately measure the likely ROI for investments into ESG initiatives. So we asked our respondents in our survey to conduct a trade-off exercise, and we asked them to do an online booking for a regular hotel stay. So if they regularly booked either for business or leisure, we asked them to think in those terms and whether or not they booked a 3 or a 4 or a 5-star hotel. And we presented them with 4 different options with different combinations of elements around guest review scores, sustainability accreditations, cancellation policy, loyalty programs, sustainability resource management, social aspects, and of course price. And the price was relevant to each of the countries and star ratings that we put to people. And what we asked them to do through a series of tasks is select which of these 4 was most important to you. And the exercise was repeated a number of times so that we could understand what was important in their decision making. In fact, this trade-off task that we asked them to do is called choice modelling. And this is the technique that organisations rely on when the business decision risk is high to them. So things like when they're looking to reposition their brand, they're looking to make investments into refurbing their hotels, or they're looking to construct a new build. So choice modelling incorporates areas of psychology, decision theory, design of experiments, and econometrics of choice. And what it allows us to do is identify what consumers value, what drives the choices when they're confronted with different options. We can put different hotel features together and understand how much it drives demand, including price. And we can also understand how much demand varies by simulating different choices. This technique has really exploded in terms of its use since Daniel McFadden won the Nobel Prize for it in 2000. So before we construct new hotel options, we need to understand what is driving decision-making. So these are the key areas that we focused on in our model. And price is the number one key driver, accounting for the bulk of choice, followed by the cancellation policy, but not very far behind are some of the ESG elements around sustainability, accreditation, resource management, sustainable resources, and also their focus on social aspects. Lower down were the guest review scores and also the loyalty programs with the different hotels that we looked at. As Chris has already alluded to, we need to be mindful, though, of the differences by different segments. And the table to the right shows the impact that each of these elements has by our 6 segments that we've identified. And for the eco-evangelists, the good intentions, and the accidentally green and the self-centered, it's on the ESG elements on a par with price when they're considering which hotel to book. And we also need to think about the property type that we're looking at when doing it. As you can see here, we've got here the differences between a 5-star hotel booking and a 3-star property. And for the 5-star property, price is much less of an impacting element compared to the 3-star hotel, where it's significantly more. And it's in the 5-star space where the ESG elements come out with a higher prominence. And we've also highlighted the individual importance of the specific aspects that we ask people to trade off. Here you can see price, again, is the number one. In fact, large discounts can have a big impact in terms of people's decision-making. As price goes up, it has less of an impact. And it's the ESG elements that look a little bit less influential on their own, but when we look at them in combination, they actually do make a big difference in people's decision-making. So what we've constructed here in a 5-star hotel situation are 2 hotel offers. Hotel 1 focuses more on just the guest review score, the cancellation policy, and loyalty rewards programs, and it's priced at a steep discount compared to the average price for all 5-star hotels at -14%. Hotel 2 has got the same guest review score, cancellation policy, and loyalty programs, but what it also promotes is its sustainability accreditation, in this case, carbon neutral. It uses sustainable sources of energy. Zero waste goes to landfill, and it promotes equality. And the price is at a 14% premium compared to the average for 5-star hotels. What we've got underneath is what proportion of our consumers who book 5-star hotels would choose Hotel 1 versus Hotel 2. And it's roughly 50-50. So what we can conclude from that is that by investing and promoting different ESG elements, Hotel 2 is able to charge more than a 30% premium over Hotel 1 and still receive a fair market share. So we've just carried those 2 same hotel options forward, and we've had a look at how that the preference varies by different groups. So we've already seen in the 5-star booking categories that it's roughly 50-50. In the 3-star hotel booking category, these 2 hotel options will be much preferred for Hotel 1. The eco-evangelists much prefer, in fact, 70% of the time prefer Hotel 2, whereas climate skeptics, almost none of them would ever choose Hotel 2. The business group are more likely than leisure bookers to go with hotel options that are more focused on ESG elements and willing to pay that price premium. So what we can do by looking at this is measure what the ROI would be for your ESG investments. And we can do this through a simulator tool that we've developed that allows us to run different market scenarios. So we can filter our results by country, age, gender, the number of stars for the property, business versus leisure, travellers, and a different segment, and any combination of these to see if we construct different hotel concepts, how the share of preference varies. After the Q&A today, we will be doing a demonstration of this simulator if you'd like to stay on the line, or alternatively, if you'd like to see a more in-depth demonstration, we'd be more than happy to take you through it if you get back in contact with us. So I'd now like to ask Chris to take us through some of the B2B research headline insights.
Rich, thanks very much indeed for that first look at what I think is a really fascinating and powerful simulator model. In the time we've got available during the webinar, I'm just going to give a few selected highlights from the B2B research that we conducted. So these are just some of our headline findings amongst, as I said at the beginning, large corporates, travel management companies, and major event planning agencies. And it's perhaps no surprise that various people in this category are at different stages of their ESG journey. So it's definitely the case that there are different levels of business maturity in terms of the significance of ESG within corporate organizations. That said, there are some very clear generalizations, which is that the higher an organization's public profile, the more important it is that they act, and equally are seen to act. The regulation, media coverage, and consumer pressure are all drivers of this increasing ESG focus. And those that are publicly listed now have a requirement to report on ESG to investors. So the consensus is not whether people will have ESG policies being incorporated, but more around when they will do so. And to that extent, there is a concern for those who may not yet be that far advanced. They do have a worry, a fear about becoming laggards. So while there may be some who've yet to move significantly on this, we anticipate that within the next 2 to 3 years, there will be a headlong rush to make sure we're not left behind, because that could become seriously damaging to the reputation of a business. For those who are already got ESG policies in place, and we asked them about the extent to which they're extending that into their supply chains, around half say that they are already doing this. And when they say they're doing this, travel is a particularly visible expression of the ESG impact of a business. So it's an obvious place for corporates to look as they seek to redefine their relationship, both with their own operating environment and their supply chain. And we did ask what it is that companies look for in when they put out hotel partnership RFPs. The numbers here, this is raw data because we had 38 depth interviews for this part of the programme. So this means 27 out of the 38, not 27%, just to make that very clear. I think it's no enormous surprise that discounts and rates naturally top the list. But what we do see is that ESG is becoming an additional requirement. Already we have over 3 in 10 saying that ESG components are already part of that RFP process to hotels. And we very much see that others say they expect this to come in the future because they have this fear of being left behind. When we asked these corporates in terms of what are the issues that hotel organizations face, what are the challenges, their number one issue is about data. It's a lack of clear, standardized, easily accessible data on ESG. It makes it incredibly difficult, not having this data, incredibly difficult for them to assess one hotel against another, one brand against another. That is absolutely the number one issue. That said, there is considerable recognition amongst these big corporates and TMCs that hotel brands are doing things in the area. They are on the case, but very few think that they have nailed it. So without question, as I showed with the demonstration of upper upscale brand imagery, there is a lot of opportunity out there that to date, no one has really claimed. And what we see coming back from the corporates is they want to have authenticity on any ESG claims. So it needs to be backed up by evidence. They are as frightened of greenwashing as you are. So it's really, really important that you can validate any claims that you make, as well as making them very accessible to corporates. Now, to a certain extent, because of the perceived absence of comparable data, some corporates have started to flag green hotels within their own system if they meet minimum ESG standards. And clearly, if you don't meet that, you're not part of their approved program. For some, the default for them is to go to some of the OTA green leaf accreditations as a shortcut for doing this, because in a sense, not surprisingly, the CSO function and support within big corporates is not as staffed up, as I'm sure you find is the case in the hotel sector. So a lack of corporate resources leads to a search for easy to use solutions, and travel intermediaries seem to be making more of a play on this than the hotels themselves. So there is a really big opportunity, and we do know that this standardization of data and benchmarking is one of the key things that the Sustainable Hospitality Alliance has on its agenda. I am now going to pass back to Tim Davis for his thoughts on how you can use research insights into corporate decision making. So, Tim, over to you.
Thanks very much, Chris. So this section, just to sort of bring us to conclusions, is really about how can the research be used to make good branding, marketing, and commercial decisions? Because although the subject matter is all about sustainability, it's not. This research is not really aimed at helping sustainability officers be more sustainable. It's about helping brands and commercial organizations to take advantage of the investments their companies are making and help adequately position their companies, their brands in a relevant way, and target the customers that have a high propensity to buy what it is that they wish to sell. So in this respect, what we really see here is the research playing a number of roles in helping companies to make tangible decisions. First, and certainly not by least, is helping companies position their brands more effectively. And that's driven by the research data that shows the value of the sustainable brand attributes and the importance of those and how you benchmark one brand against another. So that would help you decide where or how you want to change the positioning of your brand in order to better compete. And you'll see each of these decision points are ones that in aggregate build multiplier benefits on each other. So they each have a benefit, but then taken together, they have a greater, more amplified benefit. The other thing the research, as you saw with the choice modeling, does, it gives you a very accurate view of price elasticity of demand for different brand attributes. And so you can look at the things that are important, not only in terms of brand positioning, but also in terms of what you offer guests and how you price what you offer in order to maximize demand and revenue. The third area is clearly around targeting and marketing, because the research gives very good data and analyzes customer segments on a number of different criteria as well as markets. So you can see which segments in which source markets of demand are the ones that are going to find sustainability factors most appealing, but equally be able to compare the general market segmentation of consumers with the consumers that stay in your hotel, and therefore get an idea about how you need to adapt marketing in different markets for different segments to best communicate and create relevance for your brand. In terms of engagement, the research also helps understand what customers like and what they care about. And so that can be used to adapt the way you engage with customers, both in terms of being genuine, but also helping them with options and offers in the hotel stay that will resonate and reinforce the hotel's position in sustainability and how that relates to the consumer. And finally, the research really does give some very tangible economic sizing data that helps construct the business case to accelerate sustainability in a hotel brand or in a hotel property, and therefore help grow that brand or grow that network of hotels going forward. So there's some really, this is not just academic research to help people understand a general moving trend. This is research that gives some very specific data that helps management make decisions on a number of different fronts. And why is that important? Well, it's important for a couple of reasons. To the left, you can see that the traditional criteria under which hotels typically compete, brand, location, price, etc. When I first joined the hotel industry, I can remember it as clear as day. The market research said location defines 70% of the reason why somebody selects a particular hotel. Price was around 30%, sorry, wrong, around 20%. And then depending on brand and product and service, they were about equal influences, around 10 to 11% of the choice. So, but that was 25, 30 years ago. I'm giving away my age here. That position has moved significantly. Why? Because consumers are changing their attitudes. In big, broad terms, consumers are becoming much more value-driven, and they're also becoming much more socially and environmentally conscious and wanting to make the right choices. On the other side, digital maturity is giving them much broader access and easy access to many more choices. 30 years ago, it was tough to know when you were going to a place you didn't have before what choices you really have available. Today on the internet, you can see everything very transparently, and there are the tools to help you distill that vast range of choices into a short list of what meets your criteria. So in fact, the reality is many of those traditional bases of competition are now simply defining the size of the market. It's you're either in the marketplace where consumers want to buy or you're not. And that's not easy to change. Clearly, location is location. So where your hotel is and the quality level and the price level, those things don't materially change within a competitor set or in a particular location. And a consumer can easily go for any location and be able to say, here's 10 hotels that all fit the criteria of what I'm looking for in terms of primary, which then makes these other factors differentiate brands. So customer experience is a rising issue for many consumers and hotel guests. The way you do business, how easy it is, how confident they are about the choices they're making, and sustainability. How environmentally friendly are you? Do you care about your employees, about your consumers? Is it just greenwashing, or is there actually some integrity in your brand? So these are the sorts of factors that are really differentiating brands today, because the traditional factors are simply ways of defining the size of the market. You're either in it or you're out of it. So if you're going to be prosperous in the future, you need to take into account these changes in consumer demand and consumer behavior. And that's why we think that if you don't take advantage of it now, you're going to be left behind. And that's why it's important to arm yourself with the insights that are available in the marketplace to help you make the wisest and best decisions around that. And one of the things that really struck me about the research overall, and I'll echo some of the words that Chris was saying, is, think about it today. 38% of world travelers are advocates in sustainability, meaning they care to a high degree. 70% of their choice is influenced by green factors. That's enormous. If you take the organic shift from generation change, it means in the next 5 to 10 years, those numbers are even going to get bigger. So this is no longer on the fringe of decision-making for branding and marketing people. This needs to be core and central to the consciousness of brand leaders and marketing and commercial people in order to make smart decisions about how to make your hotels perform better. Thank you so much for your attention. As we discussed earlier, if you want to get in contact with us, either to have demonstrations on the simulator or to have if you have greater interest in the research or any advice that we can give, we'd be more than happy to do that. And let me hand back now to Becca just to round us off. Or sorry, is it Becca or Chris?
We're going to be kicking off with the Q&A
Okay.
now. Thank you for all that insight. That was incredibly enlightening, seeing all your research there. I just actually wanted to ask Chris first. We've heard research on all the 10 markets, but can you tell us differences between countries? Is that something you can do?
Becca, very much it is something we can do. If I may, I'm going to, before I answer that question, it's probably just worth saying, I'm not saying if we've made it clear, that we've shown a lot of information to people, and the presentation will be available to people who have registered for the event. So for those of you who've been scribbling things down furiously, you will get the chance to look at the slides later on when we send them out to the people who had registered. I can't remember if you said that at the beginning or not, Becca, but it seemed like a good idea to say it again if you did do so. But to your question about, yes, the data that Rich and I shared with you was the global data, so drawn across the 10 markets we've looked at. And we do have reports on a market-by-market basis. And actually, one of the things that somewhat surprised us, because we anticipated that there being some really quite large variations between markets. And actually, it was the similarity that hit us more than the differences. Don't misunderstand me. There are differences, and you do need to dive into individual countries to understand some of the nuances that are there. But generally speaking, it was fascinating to see that there is quite a global commonality of general direction of travel on this. When I spoke about the eco-evangelists, I mentioned that they're higher in France and in Italy. If I look across the data, there are variations by market. There is a group that we call the self-centered, and they have some sort of hedonistic tendencies to them. And that group is much bigger in the Middle East than anywhere else. So they have evolved their attitudes towards ESG rather less than most of the other global markets we've looked at. So that's quite a big difference. But on the whole, the similarities are more the point. One market that does quite interest me is China, because there are virtually no climate skeptics in China. It's a small proportion. It's only about 3%. But also, there are only a limited number of eco-evangelists. So they're sort of not at either of the extreme categories. So they're relatively low on both of those. So they fall into the mid-ground in which that perhaps is a reflection of recognition that there's a serious problem, less certainty that they are in a position themselves in any way to contribute to the solution of it. So yeah, that's what I mean by sort of country by country level nuance, which you can dig into. And I'd recommend anyone who wants to get close to the research to do so. But more generally, there are quite a lot of similarities across the various markets.
Thanks, Chris. That's really interesting. I just wanted to throw ahead to a question that we've had on our chat. If you have any questions, do pop them on there. We've got something from Felicity. So this is obviously sort of across to our panel. How difficult is it for hotel groups who are asset light to manage these sustainable expectations? I mean, she says it's a lot easier to manage investment and spend on sustainability if you own your properties. What do you think about that?
Maybe I take that one. So I think there are two aspects to this. Clearly, if a hotel group is a franchise brand, it arguably has the least influence over how a hotel is operated. If it has management contracts, it has more influence on the way it's operated. And clearly, if the brand owns some assets, then it has full control. The issue, though, is even for brands that have more limited aspects of influence over the hotel operation, they still do have quite a large degree because their brand standards around physical product, around operation, is the way they influence, but also they have brand power. And the importance about brand power is how they position that brand and how they bring the attributes of sustainability to life in a relevant way, targeting the right kinds of customers who have a propensity to want to buy that kind of brand. So I think the nuance here is it's not about necessarily just how sustainable you are. It's about the sustainability you have and where you invest and how you best leverage that in order to drive brand performance. So both planet, people, and prosperity.
Yeah, I mean, Tim, just to pick up on the points you're making there, and sort of amplify on them, I think one of the key things is to do with communication, and it's one of the things that this research has shown us is that brands are not communicating effectively to consumers the sustainability journey that they are on. So it's just not being seen. There was the chart I showed with the upper upscale brands, which I say includes leading global hotel players, and they're all much of a muchness. So no one is getting any recognition for the work that they're doing. And I don't believe it's a case that everyone is moving forward at exactly the same pace, because there should be opportunities to get a message across there. And tying into that, if I may, I've picked up on a theme you had, Tim. I'm going to pick up on a point that Rich was making when he was going through the simulator model, and he was comparing those two 5-star hotels. And once you added in all of the sustainability measures that we are able to do, you got equality of share of choice. If you add in only one or two, you just get a small increment for the hotel that is more expensive, as it slightly lifts the balance away from the one that is cheaper. It's the combination of activity. In other words, it's what you do as a whole that is important, not just the one item. I can see, I've been involved in hotel branding for 30 years, and I've always been a big believer in having signature items that identify your brand, but they're not just the only thing you do, they're just a recognizable thing you do that communicate a bigger message about all the things that you do. And it seems to me that that's an area of open opportunity for the major brands, well, for all brands.
And it's interesting to pick up on some of the other questions that we're starting to see flow through on the chat there. And I just want to address one where an anonymous attendee has said how hotel companies could avoid the confusion that the several accreditation systems like GSTC criteria, Green Key, Travel Life, and now ESG, etc., creates in the market. Well, the answer is not simple. However, of all the companies and organizations doing something about it, the Sustainable Hospitality Alliance has it on the top of its agenda to galvanize the industry around both a common set of measures and a common set of standards, such as the industry can talk with one voice. And that is particularly important because If the hotel industry does not act and act together, then media companies and intermediaries are acting and will act more, and they will end up commoditizing the individual differences between brands. So this is an important basis of competition that the industry needs to wake up to. This is where sustainability officers need to be evangelizing with their commercial marketing brand counterparts to help them understand that this is not just an issue of reputation and asset value. This is an issue of how well the brand competes.
It's really going to be a game changer, isn't it, when we do have those standardized metrics and data, which, as you mentioned, the Alliance, it's one of their top priorities, which is very exciting. I just wanted to jump to a question that we had earlier on about greenwashing quickly. Do you believe it's possible for an international hotel brand, with a global footprint, to align and position themselves with a specific sustainability cause, such as zero food waste or carbon neutral, without being seen as greenwashing or ineffectual to target guest groups? What are your thoughts there?
I'm not quite connecting in my mind the 2 points that have been connected in the question. I think to Chris's earlier comment, picking on an individual attribute gets you so far, but not really very far. It's about a company thinking about how it wants to be sustainable overall, how it wants to position itself, and using the multitude of factors to enable it to get there and live, breathe, walk, talk, all aspects of it. It's not about a feature list, deciding which attribute is most popular and then simply leading towards that. Brands obviously have different positioning and different complexity to it. Some brands literally just trade on price. Arguably, one could say then that isn't it possible that another brand could just trade on, for example, green energy? In theory, yes, but I think that consumers are more broadly being educated, and you could see from the research that they need to see a combination of factors to really believe that the hotel brand is being sustainable.
And we've got 1 minute left. I just wanted to ask a question that's been put through from Brianne. How do we overcome green hushing? Fear of putting targets out there and not being able to reach those targets, but still needing to communicate commitment to ESG. Really interesting, isn't it?
So my thought on that is, A, don't do it, because put simply, that is, if I may say, without trying to diminish politicians too much, but that is what they do all the time. They are constantly putting out promises that, successive surveys prove that they haven't delivered on. And I think it is more about looking at what they are doing and what they have done. As a trustee of the Sustainable Hospitality Alliance, I know there is an incredible amount of very good work being done across the industry by many, many hotel companies. It's a question of the commercial marketing and brand leaders getting together with their sustainability partners and thinking about where are they now, where are they going, and with authenticity, marketing those things that are their strengths to people who have a propensity to buy it. So you can't be all things to all men. It's, again, always about thinking about your core strengths as a brand and thinking about what you can market to those that find it attractive.
Thank you, Tim. We're now on 4 o'clock on the dot. I don't think we have any time for more questions, but I wanted to flag, as Chris said, we will be sending out this recording. The slides are available, the presentation is available for anyone who wants it. And if you have any questions regarding this webinar and anything that's been said, or if you want to speak to the Sustainable Hospitality Alliance, please do email us. It's info@sustainablehospitalityalliance.org, info@sustainablehospitalityalliance.org. Thank you very much. I know that we have Rich, who is going to be staying on the call in order to do the simulator. So anybody who wants to stay on and speak to Rich about that, please do. But thank you everyone for attending. And we hope this has been really helpful and it will lead to tangible results and actions on your behalf. Thank you.
So hi everyone. Hopefully you can see the simulator. It's an Excel powered tool. What we've created here are just two different hotel concepts. One of them 4.5 out of 5 stars, free cancellation policy. You can earn reward points and it's an average price in the market. The second option, it's got a non-refundable cancellation policy, but it's got some ESG elements like it's carbon neutral, uses sustainability, energy sources, zero waste goes to landfill, and it promotes equality and staff to have time off to support local projects. One of the things I can do is select different groups of people that I want to look at. So I can select either specific countries or regions. In this case, I've selected Europe, different traveller types, business or leisure, the property type, and also segment. And I can also look at some different combinations. So in the earlier presentation, we looked at 3 and 5 star properties. Here we can have a look at a 4-star property amongst business travellers. So we can actually drill down and get quite specific different elements in different groups. When I select that, the simulator will tell me what the share of preference is between hotel concept 1 and hotel concept 2. And in this case, when hotel concept 2 has got a price premium, it's not quite as strong in terms of people's preference compared to the one without. To be able to get it close, I would need to change that price discount to a lower amount, let's say 10% price premium. And now it comes quite close to that 50-50 parity. So in this particular market, it would be something different. We can also add in other hotel concepts, in fact, up to a total of 20 different hotel concepts. And we can actually select different elements within there to have a look at how the share of preference would change depending on which attributes and levels we actually wanted to test side by side. And you can see here how the share of preference is changing between the different hotel concepts that I've created. As a part of doing the different simulations that we've got here, we can also have a look at how these share of preferences vary by different subgroups. We can have a look at what the share of the custom profile will look like. And we can also have a look at what the attribute sensitivity is around each of the different elements. You will have noticed that there's a column in here called none, which is the proportion of people who say that they wouldn't choose any of these 4 hotel concepts. And in this case, it's 16.4%. So 16.4% of our target audience wouldn't select any of these. So these now approximate market shares rather than the share of preference just of the 4 options that are presented. So we can look at it in both ways. I don't know whether in the Q&A anyone's typed anything in terms of a request for a simulation, but we can certainly do that now if anyone's got a question, ideally, or alternatively, if you want to get in contact with us, we can actually do a specific demo of the simulator in a bit more depth to you. I don't know, Chris or anyone, do you want me to try and simulate another combination of features?
I was going to wonder, Rich, is it possible to sort of keep the features and just change a market segment you're looking at?
Yep. So I can have a look at the segment 6 group. which are the echo evangelists. And actually they're most interested in the two concepts, concept 2 and concept 3, which if you look down the list are the ones that are primarily focused on some of the ESG elements. And in fact, between those two, it looks like the share of preference is above 80% would choose either concept 2 or concept 3. And this just reinforces the need to be very clear in terms of the target market that you're looking to attract the hotel construct. So this simulator is going to be particularly interesting for brands that we want to reposition, or if you're looking to make investments into any hotel updates as to what the likely return on your investment can be by the different price premium that you can charge for these different elements. In fact, concept 2 and concept 3, as you can see, are at a 10% and a 14% price premium compared to the average for the 4-star segment properties.
I'm just looking at some of the questions that are coming up, and would be grateful to see a simulation of Middle East. That would need to be the full sample for the Middle East, I guess. And we've got luxury brand attractiveness, which I think you showed some of with the 5-star brands during the session. Isabel has asked, how can we get access to the tool? And I suppose a follow-up with Rich or Tim would be the best route on that.
So we could do 5-star, and we said Middle East.
Yeah. I don't know if that's going to make the base a bit small. Middle East, 5-star in Middle East is obviously quite a large market.
So here we've got that earlier concept. It's come out actually slightly in favour of the ESG hotel concept 2 at a 10% premium, whereas the business 4-star segment for Europe was slightly behind. So it does show quite a bit of importance in the Middle East amongst Middle East travellers around some of these ESG elements. I don't know whether there's any other specific simulation requests. More specifically, luxury brand attractiveness. In terms of that, we've got some brand positioning. So if you've got a specific brand, we can actually look at that within the report to understand the extent to which it's positioned around some of these ESG elements versus its core competitive set. So if there's any further requests, please get in contact with us, and we'd love to take you through the simulation tool in a bit more detail.
Rich, thanks very much indeed. And for those who stayed with us to see the simulation, thank you very much indeed. And I hope you found this whole session helpful. Thank you.